The Edmonton Oilers are struggling to score on the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup final so far. We're going to do a deep dive and try and figure out why.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. I've been doing hockey content for almost 10 years now. I want to thank everybody making Locked On Oilers your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL, $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. So, you gave me an extra day, NHL. I appreciate that. You gave me an extra day to ruminate, to bake, to come up with ideas, to get creative, to be resourceful. And I did what I love to do. I did some data analysis. I did some research. I went and compared McDavid and Draisaitl's play in each round to how they're playing in the Cup final, their playoffs as a whole in relation to the Cup final. I have shot maps to show for where all of their scoring chances through the first two games of the Stanley Cup final against Florida have come through. So we're going to take a look at those. And in the last segment, we're going to talk about looking down the barrel. It is really straightforward. You win tonight, or you have almost certainly lost. 3-0 is not impossible, but it's pretty damn close. So we'll get there. But first, I want to start with the big picture. I picked the Oilers to win this series in 7 games based on the idea that their star players were going to win their minutes, that their star players were going to usurp Florida's star players in the minutes they went head to head and conflicted. And that would be enough to make a difference. That McDavid and Draisaitl continuing to play at a really high level, which they have through these playoffs, their best series by far was against Dallas, and we're going to talk about their stats series by series in a minute. But when you think about it, you want your team to keep getting better as the rounds go along. You want your team to get better as the rounds go along, and that typically means you're going to get guys playing better or playing more engaged, playing more noticeably, because as the rounds go along, you're going to play better competition. Better competition usually means the other team has better goaltending and better defense as a whole. I'm not just saying defensemen. I'm talking about like structure. They play 1 through 5, all 5 guys on the ice, better defense than the teams you're going to play the average team in the NHL in the regular season or in the early rounds of the postseason. Against the Kings, the Oilers bludgeoned them. We're talking 2-1 in expected goals, 2-1 in actual goals, 2-1 in high danger in McDavid's minutes. McDavid's minutes, they absolutely massacred the Kings. The shooting percentage, 14%. Draisaitl's minutes, not so much. Definitely, Leon had a bit of a harder time against the Kings than McDavid did. Slightly more difficult matchup. They didn't play together pretty much at all in that series other than the one game. But he's a little bit below 50% on all the shot metrics, but it's not the end of the world. And still, even though he was outchanced, he was out high dangered, out expected goals, they still won the goals for versus goals against. That tells you that they are able to outperform their metrics to some degree. Then you go to the second round, 65-43 scoring chances for and against per 60. That's McDavid. So 65-43, massive advantage. 30-15 shots on goal per 60. 3.2 expected goals to 2.5 expected goals. 3.8 to 3.8. That tells you, because they had the exact same amount of goals for, goals against, that tells you something didn't add up. Either they didn't shoot well enough or they didn't have the save percentage. And in those minutes, Connor McDavid, 84% save percentage in the minutes McDavid was on the ice in the Vancouver series. That's why the goals for and the goals against were as close as they were. Now, excuse me, I was looking at the wrong column. That was Draisaitl against the Canucks. He had 82%. McDavid's minutes, they won still 3.82, 2.39. They won the high danger, and then the shooting percentage above average. But again, McDavid and Draisaitl, you expect to shoot above average. Then we go down. We go to the Dallas series. 80-57 scoring chances per 60. 39 to 31 shots on goal per 60, 3.1 to 2.6 expected goals. McDavid 3.57 goals for, 2.04 goals against Dallas, 14.7 high danger, 8.6 high danger chances against. That's really strong performance against a really good defensive team. And that caliber of play against Dallas tells me the Oilers have another gear to get to here. And we're going to talk about how they've performed so far against the Panthers, because I've said it more than once during the course of this playoff run. The Oilers are a score effects team, meaning that when they get behind, they really can turn the volume of offense up, but that doesn't necessarily commiserate with more actual offense. You know, we talked about this on yesterday's show, the idea that just because you get more zone time doesn't mean more high danger chances, and just because more high danger chances doesn't necessarily mean more goals. There are nuances within the game. There are inputs that we aren't able to measure to properly capture yet, but they can give you ideas. And it's not a coincidence that the Oilers have these good shot metrics against Florida through 2 games, because they've trailed for large stretches of these games. And when a team gets behind, they're going to be okay with playing more defense. They're going to concede more overall scoring chances because they're going to be willing to concede defensively. They don't want to break down. They're fine with you taking shots from the circles, from the points. And we're going to look at the shot maps in the next segment of the show to illustrate the point we're making here when we talk about the metrics. When you compare how McDavid and Draisaitl played earlier in the playoffs to what they're doing now, the numbers are reasonable other than the actual goals. The no actual goals in this round so far when those guys are on the ice. That's the issue here. They've got the expected goals advantage. They've got the shots on goal advantage. They've got the high danger chance advantage. They haven't been able to beat Bob, and Florida has capitalized on the opportunities they've had. And yes, they have good underlying shot metrics because they've been playing from behind for large stretches of the Stanley Cup final so far. And when you are playing from behind, like I just said, but I'll repeat it again just to make sure it sinks in for you. When you are playing from behind, the other team is going to invite you to take bad chances. You take a crappy shot from the point, you take a crappy shot from the top of the circles, a really bad angle, they feel they're going to be able to block that, or Bob, as long as he sees it, he's going to make a clean save on it. And that is the calculus teams make. Sure, turtling can burn you. The Stars did this last round against the Oilers. They got out to the 2-0 lead in Game 4, and they turtled, and the Oilers came storming back and won that game and went on to win the series. Now, how can the Oilers start to put the puck in the net? We talked about it yesterday. You want to beat Bob up high. He's a big guy. It's really difficult to beat Bob down low. You typically are going to have success beating him up high. We all know he has on occasion ducked the puck where a screamer's been coming and he's dove his head out of the way because he's a human. He has a normal reaction to something dangerous coming flying at you at a dangerous speed. But the Oilers need to find a way to get the offense going. That's the key here. Find a way to get the offense going and ease your guys into the game. I'm not saying I need 5 against the Panthers. The Panthers have been very difficult to score against. At 5-on-5 per 60 minutes, the Panthers are conceding 1.6 goals for. Per 60 minutes, 1.6 goals against at 5-on-5. That is outright defensive domination, and that's on 2.5 expected goals for per 60. So that's telling you Bob's playing a little bit above what you would expect, above average, which he's an above average goalie. So that tracks. If we're talking about our hypotheses, do these numbers make sense? Do they pass the smell test? They do. But we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back. We're going to look at the shot maps where Florida has beaten Edmonton and where Edmonton has tried to beat Florida from, but been unsuccessful. So stick around. We will be right back on Locked On Oilers, where we've got your team covered every day. It's summer. I know you want to get to a concert, or if you're in the market, you want to get to a Stanley Cup final game. You want to get to an NBA final game, maybe WNBA, MLB. You have got to check in with our friends over at Game Time, who have some of the best features in the business. All-in pricing, toggle the feature, shows you the total up front, no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, get a panoramic view of your seat from the app before you buy. You don't want to go to a concert and be looking at a poll the entire time. You don't want to go to a Stanley Cup final game and not be able to see the scoreboard. So they also have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and Game Time ticket coverage, the industry leading flexibility customer service policy to cover your purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA finals, Stanley Cup finals, concerts, baseball, everything under the sun. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for listening to today's edition of Locked On Oilers, whether it's first thing in the morning, on the way to work, school, and the gym, or on the way back, trying to psych yourself up for game number 3. I'm glad you're taking the time to make our show part of your day. And look, this is real hair on your chest type stuff here. This is not a Tuesday at Detroit. This is not a Tuesday at Detroit in January. This is not a trip to Ottawa in December. This is a team that went to the Stanley Cup final last year against pretty insurmountable odds with all the overtime wins they had, the injuries they had, Bobrovsky playing out of his mind. And then they got better. And they looked around and they body bagged the Lightning. I think we can authoritatively say the Stanley Cup window has closed for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Then them and the Bruins had themselves a rock fight. That was not pretty. That was not easy. But Florida did put 5 past Swayman multiple times in that series. And Swayman's a really good goalie, and the Bruins are a really good defensive team. Then they suffocated the Rangers in the Eastern Conference Final. That was like watching a grappler and an upright fighter in MMA, where the upright fighter starts throwing hands and the grappler gets a hand on their neck, sweeps out their leg, single leg to a full, and that's it. Just like that, the fight's over because the grappler is on top of the stand-up fighter and he's getting choked out. It's really crazy how good Florida is defensively. They are an elite team. Oilers have elite players. That's your formula, friends. If you want to see the Oilers pull off this comeback, it's something like 8.4% of teams in the Stanley Cup final have been able to come back from a 2-0 deficit. If there was ever a team to buck the odds, it's the team with the best hockey player of his era and maybe the best playoff performer of his era in Draisaitl. You got that. You got a shot. And I said it yesterday. I'll repeat it again real quick before we start looking at the shot maps. You need a few good puck touches in a row. That's a good shift. You string a few good shifts together, it's a good period. You string a few good periods together, you probably win the hockey game. You string together a few good games, you win a series. That's your goal. We start at the most granular level. Did I win my puck battle? Yes. Did I get it where the puck where it needed to go? Yes. Okay. Did I do it again? Okay. Bench. Can I get back out there and do it again? That's the recipe right now. When you are facing these types of circumstances, it's natural to be stressed out. It's natural to be nervous. I expect the Oilers to play a little conservatively in Game 3, at least to start, to just get their feet under them, to make sure the game doesn't get away from them quickly, because Florida can do that. Florida sneaks up on you in a heartbeat. So now I'm going to toggle on the other tab here. This is going to pull up a shot map. This is from Evolving Wild. There are other ones, but when you look at this shot map here, let's give you guys the key real quick so you know what you're looking at. Yellow means it's a goal. So Evan Rodriguez is tipping. That's a goal. Orange is a miss. And then green means it is a save. So we look over here at the Oilers map. This is game number 2. So we talked about the Oilers had won the expected goals battle for the series at large in natural stat tricks model. But in this series, this is just game 2. You look in comparison to where the Florida shots on goal and the goals are coming from, how clustered they are in and around the net front, in the slot, in between the circles. These are significantly more dangerous chances. You look over here at the Edmonton map. This is the best look the Oilers have all game, and this is the breakaway. This is the McDavid breakaway where Tkachuk can openers him from behind, and he doesn't get a good look. Other than that, you've got Draisaitl on the one-timer here. You've got Draisaitl on his strong side, taking all of his shots. You got a Hyman shot here. You got a McDavid shot here. You got a McDavid shot here. But all of this stuff out here, if you were to draw an oval from above the circles out, this is a lot of fluff. We're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We're talking 13, 14 scoring chances across 3 periods of hockey. That doesn't seem like a recipe for success in this series here. I'm going to change the size of this a little bit. So when I go to edit in post-production, it makes a little more sense, but I can make that bigger for you as we talk about game number 2. The Oilers have got to get in Bobrovsky's kitchen. They have got to get between the hashes. They've got to get into this dangerous area. The vast majority of their scoring chances, and by extension, the expected goals they generated in game 2, it's fluff. It's not particularly dangerous. Yes, you want to get heat on Bobrovsky. You're looking at these shots, who's taking them, where they're coming from. This is the goal. This is the Ekholm goal that gets notched on the way in, and it beats Bobrovsky. Yeah, you want to throw shots out from out here to just put some pressure on him to make him make some saves. But by and large, if you're not getting down here, if you're not in between the hashes, you're going to have a more difficult time. Now, I'm going to toggle over to game number 2 really quick, just so I can get there. Where is it? There it is. Okay, so this is game 2. If it'll buffer, thank you. Okay. Now, this is what we want to see. You look at this heat map. This is from game number 1. This is the game they lose 3-0. But this tells me that Bobrovsky had a great game. You look at the concentration of scoring chances, and I'll command plus it one more time to make it even bigger. You see, you got a Foegele shot, a Nuge shot, a Henrique shot, a McDavid shot, a Nuge shot, a Henrique shot, a Bouchard shot, a Foegele shot, a Janmark shot, a Henrique shot, a McDavid shot. Look how much more compressed all of these scoring chances are to the net front. You compare this to what we were just looking at, where the vast majority of the scoring chances were generated from out here. The Oilers got to the dangerous areas. They were able to create offense at a significantly higher clip in game number 1. I'm going to toggle that off, go back full screen. You see the dichotomy of the 2 games. Game number 1, they were able to get tight. They were able to make Bob make saves. But Bob saved them all. If you don't score, you can't win. Expected goals, as the old joke goes, expected according to who? Who's expecting the goals? It could be a waiting for Godot type situation where just because you're expecting them doesn't mean they're going to come. Then you look at game number 2. They didn't get any heat on Bob. He made a few nice saves. The save on McDavid on the breakaway, probably the best one he had to make all night. But the Panthers didn't let the Oilers in. The Panthers adjusted from game number 1 to game number 2. Now it's incumbent upon Edmonton to Florida adjusted to Edmonton. Now it's incumbent upon Edmonton to adjust to Florida's adjustments to Edmonton. There's a cat and mouse element to a series as it develops, as it starts to ramp up and build up. And I've long said that the first 6 games of a 7-game series, and yes, knocking on my desk for you guys listening, I think this series, I think the Oilers are going to find a way to make it go 7 games. To do that, you're going to have to get there. You got to start with 1. You got to win 3 to get to a 7. So stick around. We're going to talk about what their recipe looks like coming up next on Locked On Oilers. Hey, Locked On Oilers fans. I want to take a moment to bring up one of our partners, the mobile game Ultimate Hockey GM. Ever dreamed of being Ken Holland and managing your hockey franchise? Do you think you could run the Oilers better than Ken Holland, who may not be the GM when the season's over? Your dream can come true, and this game is most definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the seasons, and lead it to glory. Hire the right coaches and staff, trade players or picks, navigate free agency and the draft, all in a challenging and realistic world. As an Oiler fan, you know there's no offseason. GMs are constantly making moves at every point of the year to improve their team's chances, and that's why I think you're going to love this game. Ultimate Hockey GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go when you want to. I've got some traveling I've got to do this weekend. I will be installing this on my iPad and having a lot of fun messing around with it. Locked On Network listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On NHL in the game store. Make sure to check it out. Download the game app. Just visit hockeygm.app, or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, friends. You heard me make the comparison the other day. You heard me quote the great Teddy Atlas. The fire's coming. Are you ready? The Oilers have been in the fire. It's a mighty big fire the Oilers are about to walk into tonight. Florida is going to have revenge on their minds for what happened to Barkov. They want to bury the Oilers and not give them a chance, because that's what you need as the favorite. When you are expected to win, you don't want to give the underdog a chance. You don't want to even give the underdog the thought that they have a chance. And look, I know the Oilers think they can win. I have no doubt in my mind that even if the Oilers lose tonight, they're going to come out and say, yeah, we can win 4 in a row, because they're professional athletes. They're conditioned to always be locked in, and they are conditioned to always think they have a chance, because that's how they're wired. They're not like the rest of us. They're not going to go into work and phone it in on a Wednesday because it's raining and there was traffic on the way to work. They're going to be dialed in. They're going to need to deliver probably their best performance of the season if they're going to beat Florida tonight. And look, Florida's a really good team. Edmonton is capable of playing with them. Game 1 is your proof of concept. Yes, Florida won thoroughly on the scoreboard. Edmonton had a lot of chances. Bobrovsky had to play amazing. The Oilers are capable of doing this. I think if the Oilers are going to win, it's probably going to be a squeaker. All of Florida's games, for the most part, for the last 2 rounds, have been squeakers. There was one game in the last round against the Rangers where the Rangers scored 5. That was a game that went to overtime. It was 5-4. For the most part, these games are 3-2, 2-1. These are rock fights. These are slogs. That means defense. That means blocked shots. That likely means minimal special teams. But I will disqualify that from my analysis here of this series in relation to Florida's other series, because frankly, I'm expecting shenanigans tonight. I am expecting Florida to attempt to get their lick back for what happened to Barkov. I am expecting referees to overcomplicate the situation and try to manage the game as opposed to officiate the game. And that'll likely cause some problems for our Oilers friends, but they have the capacity to beat Florida. We know it. We saw how well they are capable of playing. They need to come out with an effort like they had in game number 4 against Dallas, game number 5, or game number 6. They play the way they did in game number 4 against Dallas. And look, I know they were down 2-0 and they had to furiously come back to win that game. They play like they did from the second and third period of that game, they'll beat Florida. They play like they played in game 5, they can beat Florida. They play like they played in game 6, they can beat Florida. That's a high bar to clear. Florida's better than Dallas. Bobrovsky is playing better than Ottinger. Barkov is better than Rope Hintz, who hadn't played in, I want to say, close to 2 weeks when he drew back in. Tkachuk is better than Jason Robertson. Sam Bennett is probably better than Tyler Seguin, though I don't know. That's one of those ones that's kind of hard because the counting stats aren't there, but you watch them play, you would say Sam Bennett probably makes more of an impact than Tyler Seguin. But to sound like Anthony Edwards here, if you're familiar with the NBA, yeah, they got Sam Bennett, but we got Leon Draisaitl, and I actually mean that. If the Oilers can get going here, they're going to have their looks. They're going to have their looks. You're not going to beat Florida with 11 shots on goal through 2 periods. You know, they had, I think, 8 or 7 in game number 2. That's not going to cut it. They are going to need to get volume and quality volume if they want to beat Florida. And that's asking a lot, but Florida is that good. Florida's defense is very well structured. It is individually talented. Said, you can pick on it. You can make Montour play defense. You can make Ekblad play defense. You can make Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I don't know why I couldn't think of OEL's name. You can make Oliver Ekman-Larsson play defense. You can make Kulak play defense. You turn the heat up on them. That will make things happen for you. Not Brett Kulak. Excuse me. I meant Dmitry Kulikov. Yeah, there are too many NHL defensemen. There are too many players in the NHL with similar names. You get thrown off. The other day I was talking, who was I talking about? I forget who I was talking about, but the names were like 2 letters off from each other, and I was having an entire conversation and was just outright wrong. Glad I caught that one, though. This is going to be difficult. Building is going to be jumpy. Building is going to be anxious. First 5-10 minutes are going to be very instructive for how the game's going to go. You saw game number 1, Zach Hyman had that look like 12, I think it was 18 seconds into the game. He didn't convert it, but it was a really good scoring chance, and it was a good indicator that it was going to be a little more up and down. There was going to be opportunities. Then game 2, they scored on their first shot on goal after being outshot 9-0 in like the first 7 or 8 minutes of the game. That probably tells you that they're going to have a harder time tonight. I think if they don't get that first goal, it's going to be really difficult to get 2 past Bob once Florida gets into that shell. They can do it, but it's going to be difficult. The more variables you add, the more difficult this recipe starts to become. That is why it is of the utmost importance the Oilers find a way to win tonight. If you are down 3-0, I wish you the best of luck. Crazier things have happened, but we're talking top 0.0001 percentile outcomes here if you go down 3-0 and still think you're going to win the series. It's doable, but man, would not be banking on that. So go out, win this game, reward the hard-paying people who are in the building. Going into the weekend, you'll have hockey night in Canada. Building will be electric. If it's 2-1 with a chance to go back to Florida 2-2, building is going to be alive. Give your fans, give yourself that chance. And that's not because the Oilers need the fans. It's because the fans deserve it. You are paying an arm and a leg to get into the building. You deserve your favorite team to show up and play well. You do it on a Saturday night, hockey night in Canada. Then you go back to Florida. Suddenly the heat's on Florida. They get out to the 2-0 lead. You bounce back. You put the heat on them. Then we're starting to talk about, okay, who wins best 2 out of 3? Now, I know I'm getting way ahead of myself. I've really talked myself into the idea of the Oilers winning tonight, partly because I really want them to, and partly because I think they're due. They play as well as they did in game 1. It's got to come around eventually. Now, if they play like they did in game 2, they're SOL. It's not happening. We could start talking about if Ken Holland's going to be the GM again next year or not, but that will just about do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. So please be so kind. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. If you were over there on Apple or Spotify, throw the show a 5-star review. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe, alarm bell, leave me a comment. Tell me who's the key to the Oilers winning tonight. I will talk to you guys after the game, probably not till Friday morning, Friday afternoon, because I'm watching the game out and I'm probably not going to get home till pretty late. I will talk to you guys then. Until then, let's go Oilers.